The next speaker is Sumeda. Sumeda is a senior software engineer at Opendoor on the Seller Core Experience team. She builds out various tools and interfaces to help customers find a home selling experience which best suits their needs, whether that is listing or selling their home using Opendoor services. These range from dashboards to see their home value to a digital closing experience. She also manages and maintains Opendoor's design systems and React UI component libraries, which power the Opendoor site and admin tools. Outside of work, Sumeda is an avid baker and always trying to find ways to fit more plants into her environment. Welcome, Sumeda.
Hi, thanks, Maggie. Sorry for taking over a little bit early. Role-based access control and SOX compliance are so important now that we're a public company. So it's really great to kind of see what went on behind the scenes to make that all happen. Hi, I'm Sumeda. So on the seller team at Opendoor, we actually build out a variety of customer experiences and dashboards, which span from educating the customer on buying and or selling their home, all the way through actually like digitally closing on their home. As you can imagine, the UI gets increasingly more complex as the functionality gets more and more important. This means that customers need to be 100% sure that they're trusting their home and their money with Opendoor, and that the site that they're on and that they're signing contracts on is legit. Delivering on these expectations while continuing to add new features requires pretty thorough testing. And it also helps us as a company build trust, brand, and consistency across all of our customer experiences. With different UIs, it's not as straightforward to catch a lot of UI changes. And things like colors, font sizes, mobile responsiveness, and all of those like little nitty-gritty things aren't as easy to catch. Especially when there's a ton of engineers working on the same UI, it's pretty easy to miss if one person's change unintentionally impacts another one's experience. I spend a lot of time personally staring at my team's customer experiences, so I tend to notice some pretty nitpicky changes, but that doesn't mean that an engineer from another team has the UI memorized the same way. This is amplified even more with design systems and shared component libraries, because a lot of these components that are changing are used across tons of different experiences. At Opendoor, we have a bunch of micro front ends, and a single change to a shared component, like the button here on the left-hand side, can have an unintended side effect on pretty much every experience at Opendoor without people really realizing it. UI regression tests are one of the ways that we found to actually help mitigate a lot of these unintentional UI side effects. So it allows us to compare screenshots of the UI or visual snapshots against a predefined baseline. It really helps us catch a lot of these really nitpicky things. And it also helps us QA the user experience in a way a lot easier, and it helps us QA it against design expectations. Additionally, we can also develop a lot of these components in a completely isolated environment without any kind of network calls. We don't have to worry about data loading or any of that. We can really focus just on the UI and the pixel perfect stuff. At Opendoor, we use a combination of two frameworks called Percy and Storybook, which are two different open source tools that enable the development and documentation of UI components, and also automating a lot of that UI screenshot testing. In this example, you can see that like we have a dashboard being rendered, but what we can actually turn this like pretty simple unit test into something that renders a component. If you want, you can have it mock out some data calls, do all that stuff, and you can actually render that and test it against a specific baseline. UI regression testing or UI visual screenshots don't actually replace your standard unit tests or smoke tests or integration tests, since those actually validate the expected behavior and experiences. This is really just to focus on the nitpicky UI things. So things like like the CSS changes that I mentioned earlier. Also, you have all those other tests to validate behavior, such as like whether or not a toast pops up when a user clicks a button, or that typing something in an input field will actually enable a button somewhere else. And this isn't just useful for engineering. It's been extremely helpful while QAing new features and designs. It's also greatly reduced the amount of back and forth we have as we're launching new features with design, where like, this is a little bit off, this pixel is a little bit off. we can, as we're developing, we can send these over and we can make sure that any future changes isn't actually breaking that experience. All of these things combined allow us to build really beautiful and seamless experiences for customers and really make one of the most expensive and biggest transactions in people's lives a little less scary.